The Curious Case of the Missing Numbers, introducing Detective Malone. It was a foggy morning in the bustling town of Mathsville, where numbers were everywhere, and arithmetic was the law of the land. In the heart of Mathsville stood a detective like no other, Detective Malone, the brainy sleuth with a knack for solving mathematical mysteries. One dreary morning, a curious case landed on Malone's desk. The numbers had gone missing from Mathsville, and chaos was spreading like wildfire. Without these essential numbers, the town couldn't function, and the citizens were bewildered. Malone donned his fedora, adjusted his trench coat, and hit the streets. As he walked along, he noticed all the people in Mathsville looked confused. He saw Bill, the postman, coming out of a shop as he approached.
"I can't deliver the mail without addresses,"
Bill said.
"What do you mean, Bill?"
Malone asked.
"Look around. All the numbers are gone."
Malone eyed his surroundings. There were no numbers on buildings to indicate addresses, the numbers on license plates were missing, and even the numbers on the street signs were gone. The sign for 5th Street now just read, TH Street. This was very curious, and Malone decided to stop by the Add and Subtract diner to ponder this mystery. Betty, the waitress, looked worried.
"Detective Malone, I don't know what happened. One minute the numbers were here, and the next, they were gone."
Malone ordered 2 cups of coffee, black as the night, and 3 desserts, extra sweet. Betty jotted down his order on a notepad and said,
"Coming right up."
Malone gazed out the window as he went over possible suspects. He jotted down names in his notebook. Betty returned with Malone's order and said,
"Oh, I hope you catch the culprit, Malone."
"I will, Betty. I will."
Sipping from one of the cups of coffee, Malone spotted Countess Ava, a math-loving socialite who adored numbers, sitting at a booth across the diner. He added her name to his notebook. Betty returned and placed the bill on the table.
"If you need anything else, just let me know,"
she said, and disappeared. Malone was about to go over to Countess Ava, but then noticed she had slipped out.
"Well, I will just have to pay her a visit and see what she's hiding,"
he said as he finished his desserts. As Malone wandered through Mathsville, he couldn't help but notice the dimly lit corners, where shady characters lurked. His keen eyes caught sight of Number Nellie, a librarian bookworm who loved playing with the numbers that kept the books in order at the library. Malone wondered if she knew something.
"Hello, Nellie.
Malone said as he approached.
What can you tell me about the missing numbers?"
"Oh, Malone, it's terrible. Books are misplaced and I don't know what to do,"
said Nellie.
"I want to check out a book called The Mathematician's Code,"
said Malone. Nellie frantically searched through the file drawers.
"There's no way for me to locate that except to go, one by one, through all the books on the shelves. That will take all day."
Next on the list was Sir Reginald, a quirky scientist who always had his head in the clouds. He was having a terrible day. Without numbers for measurements, his experiments were going horribly wrong. Sir Reginald loved numbers and couldn't fathom why anyone would take them. Malone had his doubts but moved on to little Joey, a mischievous kid who was known for his love of pranks. Joey had an alibi though. He was busy in a very chaotic math class where the book pages were blank and the teacher couldn't seem to write anything on the blackboard except plus signs, minus signs, multiplication signs, and equal signs. Malone made his way to the last suspect, Countess Ava. He knocked on the door, and after a few moments, Countess Ava opened it with a surprised look on her face.
"Detective Malone, what brings you here?"
she inquired.
"I'm investigating the case of the missing numbers in Mathsville,"
Malone replied.
"I need to ask you a few questions about your whereabouts this morning."
Countess Ava seemed genuinely puzzled.
"I spent the morning at the Mathsville Museum, as I do every Thursday morning. I have a standing appointment to research historical mathematical artifacts." "Why? Do you suspect me?"
Malone hesitated for a moment. The Countess seemed sincere, but he couldn't ignore the facts. He said,
"I'm considering all possibilities. It's just a routine part of the investigation. Do you mind if I have a look around?"
"Of course not,"
she replied, gesturing for him to come inside. As Malone stepped into the lavish apartment, He noticed the absence of numbers on the ornate clock hanging on the wall, and even the beautiful paintings that usually had numeric values identifying their creation dates were devoid of any numbers. Something didn't add up.
Countess Ava,
Malone began.
can you tell me what time it is?
The Countess looked perplexed and glanced at the clock on the wall.
I'm sorry, Detective, I can't. The numbers are gone.
Malone nodded, noticing her honest reaction. He then asked,
Can you recall any numeric information you came across during your research at the Mathsville Museum this morning?
I remember examining an ancient counting device.
she replied.
It was fascinating, but all the numbers on it were missing too.
As Malone listened to her responses, a realization struck him. There was one person in Mathsville who still had access to numbers, Betty, the waitress at the Add and Subtract diner. She had taken Malone's order earlier, providing the exact number of items he requested, and later, she gave him the bill, again requiring the use of numbers.
I appreciate your cooperation, Countess Ava.
Malone said, trying not to reveal his deduction just yet.
I will continue my investigation, and if I have any more questions, I'll be in touch.
With that, Malone left the apartment and quickly made his way back to the Add and Subtract diner. As he entered, Betty greeted him with a smile, unaware that he had already figured out her involvement in the case.
Detective Malone, back so soon?
She said cheerfully.
How can I help you?
I've been putting the pieces together, Betty.
Malone replied.
I now realize that you are the only one in Mathsville who could still use numbers. You gave me the correct number of items I ordered earlier, and you handed me the bill, both of which required numbers. I must say, that was a clever trick you played on all of us.
Betty's face turned pale, and she stammered.
I didn't mean to cause harm, Detective. I just wanted everyone to appreciate the beauty of math.
I understand your intentions,
Malone said reassuringly.
but taking away the numbers caused chaos in the town. There are better ways to share your love for math and numbers with others.
Betty nodded, tears welling up in her eyes.
You're right, Detective Malone. I'm sorry for what I've done.
Malone smiled.
It's never too late to make amends. Let's return the numbers to Mathsville together, and this time, let's find creative and enjoyable ways to spread the magic of mathematics without causing havoc.
And so, Detective Malone and Betty worked together to restore the missing numbers to Mathsville. Betty embraced her role as the Math Diner Queen and used her passion for math to create fun and educational number games for the town's residents. Mathsville became a place where everyone celebrated the wonders of mathematics, thanks to the collaboration between the brainy detective and the numbers-loving waitress. As Mathsville slowly returned to its numerical glory, Detective Malone and Betty decided to hold a grand event in the town square to celebrate the restoration of the missing numbers. The event was appropriately named the Great Mathsville Equation Challenge. The town's citizens gathered with excitement, eager to participate in the challenge. A giant chalkboard was set up in the square, and a complex math equation was written on it, with some of the numbers still missing. Question mark times 15 equals 45. Detective Malone explained.
We need to solve this equation to fully restore the missing numbers in Mathsville. But we can't do it alone. We need the collective brainpower of the entire town. Let's work together to find the missing number that will make this equation true.
The crowd enthusiastically took up the challenge, forming groups and discussing potential solutions. Children, adults, and even the reformed shady characters joined in, proving that math could bring everyone together. After much deliberation and collaboration, a young girl named Lily, who was known for her exceptional math skills, confidently raised her hand.
I think the missing number is 3.
Detective Malone smiled and gestured towards the chalkboard.
Let's see if Lily's answer is correct,
he said. With bated breath, the crowd watched as Detective Malone filled in the missing number. 3 times 15 equals 45. The moment of truth arrived as Detective Malone completed the equation on the chalkboard. The answer was 3, confirming that Lily's solution was indeed correct. The missing number had been found, and the numbers of Mathsville were fully restored. The crowd erupted into cheers and applause, and Lily blushed with pride. Detective Malone congratulated her on her brilliant deduction, and the townspeople showered her with praise. As the festivities continued, Detective Malone addressed the crowd.
Today, we've learned that mathematics is not just a set of numbers and equations. It's a tool that brings us together, fosters creativity, and enables us to understand the world around us. Let's cherish the beauty of numbers and continue to explore the wonders of math together.
The Great Mathsville Equation Challenge became an annual tradition, strengthening the bond among Mathsville's residents and inspiring generations to come. Detective Malone and Betty continued to work hand in hand, spreading their love for mathematics, and Mathsville thrived as a town where numbers were not just a practical tool but a source of joy and fascination for all. And so, the curious case of the missing numbers turned into a tale of unity, discovery, and the power of numbers to bring a community together. Betty embraced her role as the Math Diner Queen and used her passion for math to create fun and educational number games for the town's residents. Mathsville became a place where everyone celebrated the wonders of mathematics, thanks to the collaboration between the brainy detective and the numbers-loving waitress.